So first of all, tell me, why do you want to be mayor of San Diego?
You know, the decision to run for mayor was kind of a combination of three things. It was first a recognition of the parts of elected office that I enjoy, which is really identifying a problem, identifying a big solution, and then building the coalition and leading the effort to try and get that done. Similar to things we did where we drove tax reform or Chelsea's Law or other things. I enjoy that part of it, focusing on a solution. The second thing is I really think when you look at the city of San Diego, it's the right time. Our city has really been through an awful decade. It's a period of time that was really defined as Enron by the sea. And I think that this election offers us an opportunity to close that chapter on San Diego and really open a new one about what is the city that we want to bring. But that does require a new mayor. It requires a new vision and a new energy, a new generation of leadership, someone who's committed and focused to actually solving problems and bringing people together. And so I think I represent what our city needs at the time. And then the third part is personal, and people said you shouldn't tell people this, but it's a part of it, and it's a part of who I am. And I have a young family. I have two little boys, a wife. I gave calendar years of my life to my country in the Marine Corps, where I was gone for entire years. I missed birthdays and anniversaries and holidays. And I'm not going to live in another city 4 days a week. I have a real desire to be in public service, but I want to live and work in the same town, and I love this town. It's a great city. It's been wonderful to me, and I feel like we can give back.
And that's been one of the themes is your youth, and you emphasize the new generation. So do you really see your being mayor would be a new era for San Diego?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we've had the Enron by the sea era. We've had an era that's been dominated by this kind of Mike Aguirre-esque approach of yelling and screaming, or a lot of stagnation, and I think we have a chance to open a new era. We've talked about redefining San Diego as the world's most innovative city, and spending a decade taking the same energy we spent fighting each other in the last one and putting it towards actually solving some of these long problems we have. We have major problems with our infrastructure. We have problems with the cleanliness of our water, compliance with the Federal Clean Water Act. We have problems with the economic base of the future. We have a problem of rebuilding our city in today's world. But I think it is going to take a new approach, and someone who's demonstrated you can bring both parties together. You can bring labor, business, and the environmental community together behind solutions, and really get us focused on where we're going.
Do you think, though, that some might see your relative youth as a hindrance? Bonnie Dumanis has been here for decades. Carl DeMaio's been in office on the city council.
Right.
Filner has a lot of experience with San Diego. You have experience, but it's been up in Sacramento.
No, I think our experience is our greatest asset. I've led men in combat. We've literally made life and death decisions under direct enemy fire. We've demonstrated the ability to lead in challenging and difficult environments. And more importantly, we've demonstrated an ability to tackle and grasp complex, difficult issues, build those coalitions that are necessary to achieve important things. And I think the combination of those two, plus a fresh approach, a fresh vision. I haven't been sitting in government for 35 years, which means I'm not wedded to the way it's always been done. I'm willing to look at new ideas and new approaches. I'm not tied to the personalities and problems and bickering of the last decade in City Hall. I'm not bringing in the same enemies and the same resentment and the same problems. We really are coming in with a new slate, a demonstrated ability to get things done, to build coalitions, a lot of new ideas for where we go, and I think that's a great combination for our city right now.
You do have some big political names associated with your career, though.
Right.
And Pete Wilson is certainly one. Do you see yourself sometimes as a version of him?
Well, I think there's probably some things we agree on. We certainly have some kind of biographical similarities, roughly the same age when running for mayor. Similar backgrounds with the 4 years in the Assembly and the Marine Corps. Yeah, there's some areas where Governor Wilson and I disagree on, and I think that. But I think even Bob Filner recently agreed in an interview that he was really the last great mayor we had and a true leader for our city, and I think he did a lot.
You also, as we saw yesterday in the City Beat article, had some ties to Duke Cunningham. Are you worried that is going to be something that hurts you?
No, I mean, the story, when you walk through the stories that have been out there, it demonstrates that over a 2-year period, I was there for a few months. I had no knowledge or understanding of what happened. But I do think that there is maybe a positive outcome in that. and that I've seen up close and personal, the betrayal that he did. You know, here was a man who was a war hero, who had served his country, and at a time when we had veterans, including myself, in harm's way. He was taking defense appropriation dollars and bribing them. And that's the ultimate betrayal, not only of the public that elected him, but every military service member who was overseas. And that's where I was during the vast majority of the period, was in Iraq serving.
Some people have said one of your biggest problems in this election is your name recognition. And then one of the ways people have come to recognize you is through the lifting of the cap, CCDC, a year or so ago, which wasn't a very popular decision among a lot of people.
Sure.
Do you regret that? Do you wish things had gone differently?
No. No, look, you're in office to make bold decisions and do what you believe is right. And sometimes that's going to require doing things that may not be popular. We don't sit around and poll or focus group or test our decisions. We do what we believe is right. In this instance, we had the opportunity to go secure between $9 and $11 billion of San Diego's money to stay right here in San Diego to invest in infrastructure. The council had the full discretion on how it would get spent and could have endless public hearings about where the money actually went. But what we did provided more money to our local San Diego schools. In the words of Richard Barrera, who's chairman of the school board, an independent analysis said it provided $200 to $300 million in extra revenue to the general fund. And if I have the opportunity to go and get billions of dollars for infrastructure which is crumbling, provide more money for our city, more money for our school, and let San Diegans keep more of their money in a way that there will be a full debate on how it's spent, I'll do it every single day.
Would you do it in a way that, I mean, people classified it as a secret meeting, it got done in the dead
Sure.
of the night. Would you change the way that part of it went down?
Yeah, but that was more of a political problem, in that we had a lot of people that anytime you get something done are going to take shots at it. And the reality of it is that legislation was presented before the entire assembly. We held it until every legislator had a chance to actually read it. It was a very short bill, to read it and have a full analysis done. Then we had an open debate on the floor of the assembly, and 2/3 of the democratically elected members of the state assembly, knowing exactly what they were voting on, knowing exactly what it did, voted to support it. Then it went to the Senate, where they had the same thing, a full reading, a full analysis. 2/3 of the Senate, knowing exactly what they were voting on, voted to do it. And it went to the governor, who had an extended period of time to review it, and he signed it believing that it was right. There is a debate and difference among some that say, gosh, you need to go back and have a vote of the public or kind of go through all this. Why? I believe we're elected to make decisions. And I believe we're entrusted with the public to make decisions on their behalf. And I'm not going to hesitate to do what I believe is right, even if I know, and I suspected we might face some criticism. But I think you've got to be willing to do what you believe is right in spite of potential criticism. And then you just go out and explain it. I don't think we did a good enough job explaining it. I think if there was a lesson learned, it was so many of my colleagues from other parts of the state just said, wow, I wish we could get this for our city. This had been done before for other cities, and when it happened, those cities rejoiced at the good news. But San Diego is such a contentious political environment. There was a real inability to see the upside for it, and we could have done a better job going out and explaining what we did.
Do you think that legislation contributed at all to the governor's decision to end redevelopment?
It's silly to think that a legislative body that by a 2/3 vote voted to do something knowing exactly what they're doing would somehow be mad at themselves and vote to eliminate it.
So, getting to San Diego's other issues, the pension issue. You are supportive of the comprehensive pension reform initiative on the June ballot. Why do you feel like that's something that would work for San Diego?
Well, we've seen this problem play out in kind of it's been the dominant issue of the last decade because a lot of the mistakes that were made, both in giving benefits that were too high and weren't properly funded, and the underfunding of the pension system, because in 1996 they wanted to have a convention, and in 2000 they wanted to build a stadium, which are just as bad a decisions as giving benefits that are too high. But the reality is we have an unfunded liability of approximately $2 billion, and we have a system that's out of line, and there needs to be action taken to solve it. And I think that this is an initiative that will pass, and there's a way to implement it that's fair to the city workers and fair to the taxpayers. And most importantly, this gives us the opportunity to move on. We don't have to spend another decade talking about pension reform. We can move on to rebuilding our economic base, to focusing on our education system, to rebuilding the city of the future.
Talking about the education system, you have joined with Tony Young and gone around and had some school forums. People have asked the question, why are Why are you so involved in schools? It's not something the mayor has any involvement over in San Diego. Why spend your time on that?
Well, I think every elected official at every level of government should talk about education. It's an economic issue, and that so many CEOs and those that are out creating the jobs of today, I say, what do you need? I mean, what do you need to be competitive in today's environment? And I've heard time and again, it's workforce. I was in a meeting with a group of executives at Qualcomm. He said, we have hundreds of jobs open today. And we have thousands of applicants, and none of the applicants have the skills for the jobs of today. And so I think what we really need to drive, if we want to be the economic base of the future, we got to have the education system of the future. I also view it as a moral issue. I grew up in a working class family, and one of the great things about America is that every child gets access to the American dream. We don't guarantee you equality of outcome. There's no part of the American dream that says everyone gets the same size house. We don't even guarantee you equality of ease. If both of your parents went to college, it's going to be easier for you. Than maybe when I went through, and neither of my parents had graduated college. That's okay. But what we do guarantee you is equality of access. And when we have dropout rates, testing rates that are significantly lower because of someone's race, ethnicity, or their parents' income, it's inconsistent with our moral values, because those kids are not being afforded access to the American dream, and it's a moral issue. And so I've said, I think every elected official at every level of government, I don't care where you sit, if you sit on a water board, if you sit on a county board of supervisors, a state assembly, Congress, or city office, you should care about education. And Tony and I went about really exploring what are some ways that we can work on that.
What do you think the mayor could do?
Well, we're going to put out in the coming weeks our education plan, which will detail, as mayor, these are the things that I'll do. Without pre-releasing it, I think we're going to look at a number of things. We're going to look at some great examples of technology to provide greater access to information. We're going to focus on workforce. Workforce is an education issue. If someone loses their job, my dad was a laborer for International Paper. They left, they're gone. That job's never coming back. So you could park him on unemployment, but you'd have to leave him there for the rest of his life. So how do we take people that have lost their job and retrain them to put them back into the jobs of today? And then I think we'll see some specific things we'll do to be a complement and be a help to our teachers in schools.
What about San Diego's structural budget deficit? Do you agree that it is fixed?
Well, I don't think it's ever fixed. I don't think any budget at any level of government you ever say it's fixed. You can always find more efficiencies. You can find better ways to utilize technology. You can find better ways to restructure things. I think the mayor deserves credit in having made progress. You see the elimination of close to 1,800 positions over the time he's been there. Latest projections have it at about $12 million as currently stated. And I think as they continue the managed competition process, you could see that gone. Now, there are major problems that the next mayor is going to inherit. The backlog of deferred maintenance is significant. I believe it could be close to $1 billion that we need to do just to catch up the deferred maintenance and not really addressing the issues of potentially bringing 1 million more people to this region. And I think that we have a lot of areas of our city that still aren't working very well. In the infrastructure, we found when we put together our comprehensive infrastructure plan, you have a kind of bloated bureaucracy where you have multiple levels of sign-off on every project that really stop dollars from getting out the door. I was recently down in a neighborhood where they expressed their frustration that they've been promised streetlights for 3 years. The money's been sitting there, it's not getting spent. And so I think that the next mayor has an opportunity to really rebuild and restructure our city for the future.
Do you think there's been talk that too much attention is focused downtown?
Right.
What do you think about that?
I think that's a fair criticism. I live out in a neighborhood, and when you go out to a neighborhood and you see that they don't have streetlights, or they don't have sidewalks, or they have roads that are in terrible conditions, I certainly understand the sentiment of neighborhoods. And the health of your city is tied to the health of your entire city. You can't have one area of your city that's strong and have a strong city. You have to have an entire city that's whole. I don't believe that you go build up one area of town by tearing down another, but I do think you need a mayor that's going to have a focus on ensuring our neighborhoods get the services and attention they need.
What do you think about these development projects that will likely be handed over to the next mayor? The convention center, stadium, finishing, I guess the library would be finished, but,
Right.
or Balboa Park, big
Sure.
civic projects. What do you think about those? Do we have the money? Should those be priorities right now?
Well, I think you've got to do them in a way where it's a broader vision for our city. I have no interest in building a standalone stadium downtown you use 8 to 10 times a year to play football in, because that's a missed opportunity. If we can have a broader conversation about a regional asset we use 350 days a year, about rebuilding a sports and innovation district so we get those good paying innovation jobs. If you do that, do you need the sports arena anymore? And how can we do a redevelopment of that site to create a job training center? Manufacturing jobs. I worry greatly about the erosion of the middle class. San Diegans should be working their way into the middle class, not seeing those jobs leave. That's something that could revitalize an entire area of town. Let's have a conversation about what you do with the current Qualcomm site. You can imagine the urban park you could build on the banks of the river, a partnership with housing where transit's already built in. Now we're starting to have a conversation about something that's affecting our entire city and not a little postage stamp downtown. Something like that I could get excited about, because I think it moves all of our neighborhoods and city forward. But it requires a bigger, broader vision in terms of seeing a bigger opportunity than just a box they play football in.
The recent polls that came out have you at 13%, trailing all the other three major candidates. Is that a concern to you? Are you doing something to try to change that, or?
Nah, it doesn't bother me a bit. People would ask before I announced for mayor. I got this all the time. They said, "What did your poll tell you before you announced for mayor?" And I said, "I didn't do a poll." And they said, "Well, how did you possibly know to run for mayor?" And I said, "I believe in my heart I'll be a good mayor." And a poll can't tell you that. I know that there's a lot of people that will come together to help us, and we're certainly seeing the evidence of that. From the day we announced until today, we've been surging. We've seen our support more than double in the polling that's out there. But most importantly, we have the best ideas. We have the broadest coalition. We have the most energy, and we have a compelling vision for our city. And at the end of the day, that's what the public's looking at. I don't sit around wringing my hands about what pundits or political consultants say about polling.
Is there any one of the other three major candidates that most, concerns you, or you see as a bigger opponent, or?
No, I think there are very clear and stark differences between the candidates. You have two that have kind of defined their career on polarization and just pure partisanship, and that resonates. They both have large bases of support. You have one I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and our district attorney, who has a long track record and is kind of representing an extension of the status quo and a continuation of kind of the city hall you have now. We offer something completely different. We're saying if you want to turn the page on the problems of the past, if you want to move beyond this pure partisanship and this polarization and this divisiveness, if you want to bring new ideas in, not be tied to the status quo way it's always been done, then I'm your candidate. If you don't want that, then you have a wealth of candidates to choose from.
In San Diego, whenever we have these big projects, so the convention center, they're questioning the financing. As
Right.
Balboa Park, now they're questioning the historic landmark status.
Right.
Chargers, who's going to pay for it? Do you feel like the city gets too bogged down in these things so that we never see any progress, or do you feel like these are good discussions to have?
The discussions on the financing are really good discussions, and if we'd had them more in the past, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now. So in ~96, when they wanted to have the convention center and they didn't know how to pay for it, everyone said, "Oh, we'll just underfund the pension system." When they wanted to build Petco Park in 2000, so the financing question, how are you going to pay for it? So I don't think you can have enough conversations about the financing aspect to make sure you're doing the right thing by the taxpayers. What I think sometimes that we strive for too much in politics is this notion that you're going to magically get consensus. And everyone out there is going to line up and support what you're doing. And if you strive to get consensus, you're never actually going to get there, because there's always going to be opposition. There was opposition to Chelsea's law. There was opposition to lifting the cap. There was opposition to the tax reform we did. I'm not looking for ideas that have no opposition. I'm looking for big, bold ideas that will reposition our region for a better future. And what is the coalition you need to build that's big enough to get it done? And I'm interested in making sure that we do it right. I want future generations to look back on our actions and say, hey, they did their homework. They made a bold move. It might have had some opposition, but boy, we're sure glad they were willing to step out and push for it.
Talk a little bit about Chelsea's law, obviously based on a tragic case.
Right.
What did it do in terms of, not to sound crass, but like your political career? It certainly made your profile go up? Rose your profile?
I was with Brent and Kelly last night, and Brent was kind of teasing because they reached out to me through a mutual friend, and I'll never forget the Sunday afternoon going out to their house. And this really hasn't, I don't think this part of the story's ever been told. And I said, I'll work day and night to help you get this passed, but I'm not the one you want to partner with. I said, I'm the youngest member of the legislature. I'm in the minority party. These things are really difficult. They historically, rarely, if ever, actually get through the legislature. And I said, so I want to introduce you to some of my colleagues who've been there longer, some from the Senate, some from the majority party. And I said, I'll do all the work, but we're going to, this will be easier. And they came back and they said, no, we're gonna do it with you. And through the process of Chelsea's Law, I was really sensitive to have the family be the lead kind of spokespeople for it, because they have such amazing strength and character, and I was very sensitive to my role of being involved. We passed on hundreds of media opportunities because if they didn't ask me to do it, or if they weren't there, I often didn't feel it was appropriate. And what we did was go and quietly work behind the scenes to build the coalition we needed, to negotiate in good faith, to make some difficult compromises in order to do the right thing and get it through the legislative process. And I'm really proud to have been a part of that amazing group of people, with Brent and Kelly leading the way, with our coalition of 100,000 change makers, and then with all of the legislators who did the right thing to demonstrate it is possible to solve and confront big issues.
Tell me a little bit about, I'd just be interested to hear in your words, your background, where you grew up, who you are.
Yeah, so I grew up, I get asked every day, are you of the Fletchers of Fletcher Hills?
Yeah, someone told me you were.
No. They're like Fletcher Parkway or Fletcher Cove. And I would say, if you know any of those Fletchers and they want to contribute to my campaign, I'd be happy to take their support. But I was from the factory working Fletcher family. And I mentioned my dad, he became a police officer. And so I got a great appreciation growing up for hard work. I started at a really early age cleaning up on construction sites. I had a little lawn mowing business when I was 12 or 13. In high school, I was an athlete. I played football and baseball and track. I went on to play in college. And so I wanted to play sports in the afternoon, but I had to work. And so I got a job at a movie theater. I was a janitor in a movie theater. I got up at 4 a.m. every morning and cleaned the theater before school so I could play sports. Went to college on a baseball and academic scholarship, and even there I worked. I worked in a lumber yard. I drove forklifts, carried heavy wood. We call it a strong back and a weak mind, and helped pay for schools. I had a really interesting job, I think, that prepared me for politics. I was a bouncer in a bar. So people say, hey, all they do is fight, and I'm like, I'm good. I've got experience. I can break them up. I think one of the hardest jobs I ever had growing up was a summer I spent. I had to make a lot of money in the summer to kind of get me through and tide me through. And in the South, they build cinder block buildings with those big cinder blocks, which we don't build out here because of the earthquakes. But I went, and we were 7 sections high on scaffolding, 7 stories high on scaffolding. And they did the math, and they figured it was cheaper to pay me than to rent a forklift. So for a whole summer, my job, I'd show up at sunrise, and they'd have the huge stacks of cinder blocks, and I would take them from the ground, and I would stack them. And then I would climb up, and I would take them, and I would stack them from the bottom all the way to the top and back down. And I did that for summer. I would actually wear the tips off of your fingers, and the cement would, you'd wake up with this claw, and you'd kind of have to pry your hands up.
It's like CrossFit.
Yeah, it's like CrossFit, except I pay for CrossFit.
Yeah.
But I think, all of those experiences, I think, they shape you, and they kind of mold you. And they gave me a great appreciation for hard work, and for the fact that you get up early and you commit yourself fully to whatever you're doing. But also a deep appreciation for the difficulties that working families face, and what that means, and the desire we all have of a little bit better life for our kids. And a real appreciation for the opportunities afforded to us here. Here, not too long after having been in that environment, at a relatively young age, I represent La Jolla and Rancho Santa Fe in the state legislature, and I've got a decent shot at being the next mayor of the 8th largest city in America. And I'm not of the Fletchers of Fletcher Hills. And those opportunities, and that's no testament to me, that's just the opportunities we have. If you work hard and you have success. But I think ensuring you have an environment that allows for that doesn't happen by accident. And so a lot of ways, I think a lot of what I do in elected office is try and make sure the kids have access to a good education, that small businesses have the opportunity to grow and expand, that we're a place that's competitive in today's global economy, and so I view it that way. The second thing I got growing up was a great appreciation of service. My dad became a police officer. That's a difficult job. It's a hard job. It's a underappreciated and overworked, thankless job. They see things that people don't want to see. They deal with problems. We want to act like they don't exist. And they put their life on the line every day when they go to work. We've seen that too many times in the last year in San Diego. Jeremy Henwood, Chris Wilson, these others who just went to work to do their job and protect us. And I think sometimes maybe it's the military background, but we kind of lose perspective on what that means. I remember hearing the story of one of our San Diego law enforcement officers a few years ago who was killed in the line of duty. And when they showed up to do CPR on him, and they took his shirt off and they took his vest on, underneath he had a shirt and had the handprints of his kids. And they're doing CPR there, and those kids never saw their dad again. And so I just think, I think that desire to serve really hit home at an early age. My mom's in service. She runs shelters for battered women and children. She's a crime victims advocate, works on behalf of the victims of crime, abused women and children and those things. And so I really think, hard work and service were the two things that motivated me. My first opportunity, I think, to combine both of those came in the Marine Corps, which was definitely a defining issue, and I think in a lot of ways shaped my politics as well. In today's environment and climate, everyone says, oh, well, that group's the enemy. And we saw it. There was a debate early in the mayor's race, and it was a better San Diego, and a lot of organizations that probably aren't naturally supportive of mine. And people say, well, gosh, you're not going to go, are you? And I said, why would I not go? I mean, if you believe in your ideas, you should go before any audience. But I said, why would I not go? And people say, well, that group's the enemy. And I fought in a war. I've seen an enemy. We don't have enemies here. We have people we disagree with sometimes. And I think a lot of times people need to calm down, need to ratchet down the rhetoric a little bit, and sit down and talk to people and figure out how you solve problems. Everything in today's political environment is also a crisis. Everything's a crisis. And that we have real challenges and problems, but I get on a conference call to deal with the crisis, and I'll say, how many people are dead? How many people are bleeding out of their ears? You have Humvees on fire? Are you in a minefield? Are you taking mortars or small arms fire? Because that was a crisis. And you know what? When I was there, we didn't freak out. We didn't yell and scream. We didn't call anybody names. We didn't flail about. We looked at all the information. We made the best possible decision. And we moved forward. As the information changed, we reevaluated our decision. And so I think those experiences certainly shaped me as well.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we're a great city. It deserves a great debate. And I think everyone who runs for public office deserves the appreciation, because it's not often easy, but it is really important.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.